I'm from Indiana. I work in migrant education, so our students travel up from Florida to Texas, and we do supplemental services during regular school year. Most of our kids come in around May, leave around October, November time. So they finish up harvest season, they either move on to Michigan or Wisconsin or go to the East Coast, head back down. And so we try to just engage our students, find a reason for them to want to come to our summer program. That's our main focus area because they're so transient that they miss out on lots of schooling. So we try to reinforce those skills. And so we use a lot of technology basically as the carrot to say, you want to do this, come in. And then we actually build that around math and language arts. So tons of vocabulary, tons of reading development while we use high-end technologies, which is really scary for our teachers when we first bring them in. But once we break down the walls of the vulnerability, it's really kind of fun. So we always talk about Whitecoating. Typically when we start talking about coding, teachers are like, not me, I don't know anything about it, and there is no way I'm going to be vulnerable to coding, right? And so we start talking about, look, this is no different than what we're already doing, right? It's just a matter of we don't know, and sometimes we have that fear of when we don't know, how are we going to leverage that? And so we talk about, we have tons of vocabulary that we're going to automatically leverage in our lessons. We have process, we have hands-on, so it's engaging, and the kids can be creative. And so when we start talking about coding, we start talking about jobs, and the first thing typically comes to mind is computer science. So our math and language arts people are like, nope, no thanks. Math people can relate a little bit. Language arts is typically no. Programmers, really scary for all subject levels, right? And so then we start talking about, wait a minute, if we really look at the jobs that coders do, we have storytellers and problem solvers, musicians, builders, right? So we have all these careers that really fit this demand. And so we're moving to a more service industry, non-manufacturing here. But how do we get our kids involved in this? How do we have our teachers understand, let's do this? And I know that we have the time, right? How much time that we can actually leverage to do coding versus meeting our standards, and that's a fine line. But how do we get them access? Maybe it's not during our class time, maybe it's after school. But as long as we get it to them and say, hey, this is cool, why don't you check this out? Okay? And so we always walk in, and I start all of my sessions with my teachers of, why can this not work? Like coding, this stuff is not gonna fly, is it? And they start ripping them off. And so we actually call them the why not excuses. And so we get them out there and we're like, all right, good, at least we got that over with, now we can move forward. Because they wanna know why we can't do something, as opposed to like, how can I do something? And so we try to push that way. And I'm gonna tell you, on the next slide, when we start talking about this, a lot of our teachers are like, oh, right? And so our opinions are very, very diverse when we see these things. It's very scary, right? And I remember when first time I saw this list, I was like, nerds, right? Nerds. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. Well, I don't know anything about this. So, we kind of let those things go and we talk about it. But we also talk about we have to start early, right? We're basically teaching them to think. That's what we're supposed to do every single day in our classroom anyway, right? So how can we get them to think differently? Get away from the standard structure of what we have, okay? To be able to be creators and not just consumers of our information, okay? And so now is where we can actually get our hands on, okay? And so a lot of times I get a lot of excuses of, I only have iPads or I only have Chromebooks. And so I have 3 slides on here. We have computer-focused coding resources here. Free, no cost, okay? Can be student and teacher driven. And then we also have mobile devices. So we have apps that can be downloaded, okay? Yeah, I can go back to the computers. And so we're actually, on this viewboard, this is actually a large computer screen, touchscreen. So when I end this presentation, you'll be able to come up and see some of the different options that we have available. If you used the hour of code before, how many of you used the hour of code? Excellent. So some of that's gonna be very familiar to you and understand it. As we move into mobile devices, these are really neat, especially as we get into Scratch Junior, we can get into some basic to higher level types of coding, right? And so I really like to start in these areas. Swift Playgrounds is the new Apple coding software for app. They also have Swift for your MacBooks and computers, which then can be combined with some higher end technology. You can actually build an actual application, which is really cool. But Swift Playgrounds is an iOS only app, which is kind of nice. And then we have app controlled robots, right? We have tons of robots right now that are coming out that you can actually code. Okay, we start with the Ozo bots that we can draw lines and it follows, has sensors. But we also have like Sphero robotic balls where we actually can have Blockly. So Blockly is like a code that says move forward, okay, turn right, change the color, and we just drag that in there and it makes the ball go do those things. But then you can also write script with it as well. So there's tons of technologies out there that are involved. And I get this a lot. I don't have a lot of technology, or I don't have enough for my students. What do? So there are actually tons of resources on code.org of how to get started. Okay? And when I show you the first one, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this makes total sense, right? And so as we get started here, it's just something as simple as like giving a command, right? Commands and directions are called algorithms, which is our vocabulary. And so when we start here, we can actually cut these directional pieces out. And this is a very simple activity, okay? This can be done on the computer, where I just select which way it's going, or I can actually cut these out. So we actually start with our teachers and they're like, oh, we don't have technology, that's cool. Here we go, let's start here, okay? Even being able to understand directions and pairing where me and my partner are back to back, okay? And I have 8 blocks that have vocabulary terms on each side, and all blocks are matching. And so as I'm building something, I'm communicating to my partner what vocabulary word is up and which is out, right? And so we're talking about communication skills that's part of coding. And so our kids love that. But there's tons of resources in here. That's just the happy maps, but in the code.org, there's tons of that low tech, no tech, that you can actually, I'm sure that when you see it, you can apply it to something you do in your classroom and be like, oh my gosh, I could have them give directions to ... and we can use apples or whatever you use. I'm sure that once you see this, you're like, oh my goodness. Then we get into some coding like this. This is our Blockly type of coding, right? This is more of our hour of code, like we want to move. So it says we want to go east to meet the pig. And so we have to go, and then we can hit run, and we can test it and see what it does. And it's like, oh, that's 1 hop, so I need to add 1 more block, right? And so I can reset it, and I can add another block, and I can run, and it's like, oh, you achieved something. So you can gradually build on this. As you can see, I will get more and more familiar. So it doesn't matter what your level is. Really nice spot.
What's this one called?
This one is just at code.org. This was level 1 of the student section. So when you actually go to code.org, you can select teacher, student, and I selected student, and I went to the level 1, the very basic level. If you go to the teacher side, there's teacher resources of how to teach and how to integrate coding, which is really cool. So you don't have to be afraid of not knowing. But the other cool thing is that I found is that in the beginning, I did not want to let the guard down of not knowing. So I thought I had to work ahead. They worked further and harder than I did. They'd come the next day and they were like already 5 lessons ahead. So once you introduce this, do know, lesson 2 is not going to occur tomorrow in your class. They're going to be on lesson 7 or 8, or they will have built something when they come in and they're like, hey, Mr. Everhart, this is what I found. Awesome, show everyone else, right? And that was okay with me. Like, that's cool. At first it was like, oh, that's nerve-wracking, like I'm out of control. But being able to facilitate that learning has been really awesome. As we get into code combat, this is gamified types of things. They pick up gems and they earn awards, kind of cool. Then we have Google for CS first. So really lots of different activities can take it higher end as well. So it could be a good higher elementary, middle school focus. Scratch is another one that you can dig really deep into actually and build some cool things. And then this is kind of just the code.org website. So as we come down here, we have students, educators, hour of code, which we've seen, right? And so what we try to do is go beyond the hour of code. So we do the hour of code. And then it's like, oh, we did an hour of code. You did 1 hour of code for the rest of your school year? Like, we need to go beyond the school, beyond the hour of code, right? And so we show them these lessons, and these are wonderful to get started for teachers. Those are great for students. Don't be afraid just to let them go. It looks like it's a game, but they're engaged. I truly had this happen last summer. I had a girl that was defiant, in trouble. She was about ready to get kicked out. I come in, we do a coding class, and she sat there quietly the whole time. The next day she came in, and she was the one that actually led the class the next day. And actually the director of the program came in and said, "What did you bribe her with?" And we're like, "Nothing." Her mind understands this. She does not understand the way the teacher is teaching it. And not that anyone could understand that, but in the moment. But it was a really great experience because now she's on board. She has now a relationship with the teachers that she didn't have because she's able to do some things like this. So if you want to, come up here. You can play with any of the coding games. It's just a touch and go. And